Welcome everyone to the Watershed Education Center in the town of Livonia. For those people in the room and for those people virtually, we are hosting our one of a series of programs this evening. And my plan, I'm Mary Underhill, and I am the Watershed Manager and Planner with Livingston County Planning Department. What I'd like to do is do a little bit of housekeeping for those folks sitting in the room. And Don's already turning his off. Good job. And then we'll do a brief overview of the Education Center programming theories that we offer, and then I'll introduce the speakers, and then we'll move right into the program. Sorry.
You can get at it.
Thank you. Alrighty. So for housekeeping, exit, this whole group is well aware, exit over here, double over there, and single here. And we have the restroom over to the side. So we also will have the ability to do questions. If you guys want to put questions in the chat as we move along, please feel free to do that. And we'll make sure that there's opportunity for questions in between speakers and at the very end. So the overview of the Education Center, we've got our frequent flyers here in the room. And I noticed that everybody that's online also has attended our program. So you guys are well aware of the fact that we offer 12 to 14 programs a year. And our target audience really is more, it's more of a science-based water quality discussion that we have here in this facility. Although we do dabble a little bit with some family, local history programs and some Native American storytelling, but mostly we're here dealing with professional science-based discussion. Our sister program across the way is the Chippewa Nature Center, and they are a complementary program that they handle most of the kids and the family events. For our program, we can, you guys can find our schedule on the CLA website. And this year we do have 14 programs. We just finished the Rain Barrel program or workshop last couple weeks ago. And we had stellar attendance on that one. This one is the Watershed Management Plan update. So this is the state of the watershed, and we've got 3 speakers are going to be entertaining you guys this evening. And then in May, also we're going to have an amphibians talk. In June, a managing nuisance wildlife. July and August, we have a 2-part series that targets landowners on how to manage stormwater on site. So rain gardens, bioswales, and rainwater harvesting in July. And then in August, we're looking at a property owner's guide to increasing resiliency to flooding, erosion, and ice jams. And all of those, you know, are current issues. So that's a little bit of a upcoming intro on what you might be able to anticipate. And again, if you guys want the schedule, you just pop into the CLA website. Just to mention a little bit about the Education Center, bear with me, the folks in the room know this information, but we're taping this and we are hoping to make this available to the general public that doesn't know all of the background information that you guys do. The web itself is supported by the town of Livonia, but it has a number of partners engaged with the maintenance of the program itself and the wonderful technology that allows this to be a hybrid program. We've got the town of Livonia, the COA, the Conesus Lake Association, Planning Department, the Department of Health, and Cornell Cooperative Extension are our main partners. And then we also do get support from Finger Lakes Institute, Soil Water Conservation, and entities like that when we have special programs when they come in and do some support. I did mention that we have 12 to 14 programs a year. And one of the things that we really should mention is the number of volunteer hours that goes into supporting this project. We've got mainly a CLA provides a lot of staff support of volunteer hours. But we also have the Planning Department and the Department of Health, Cornell and Cooperative Extension, all sitting on what we call our Education Committee. And that is who brings you guys these wonderful programs that you're going to be enjoying this evening and in the future. So that is my little introduction for the Watershed Education Center. And then that moves us right into the program this evening. And we're actually going to turn it over to Heather Ferraro, and I'm going to let everybody do their own bio and introduction. Heather Ferraro is going to speak first, and then I will speak second. And then we also have a third speaker, Don Mariansky, will come in, and then Heather will wrap us up and bring us home. So I'm going to turn it over to Heather.
Thank you, Mary. Thanks for everyone coming out tonight and for joining us on Zoom. I'm Heather Ferraro. I'm the Livingston County Deputy Plan Director. And I'm here, as Mary said, with Mary Underhill, Don Mariansky. We are part of the Watershed team. We're just going to go through what we've been doing in the watershed this year, as well as 2023 is our 20th year of the anniversary of the publication of the Conesus Lake Watershed Management Plan. So without further ado, I will take you through an introduction to the watershed, to the structure of the management program, and then Mary and Don will both take you through some more recent events last year, kind of an overview of the watershed management program and the watershed inspection program. So as you can see on the screen, Conesus Lake is the westernmost Finger Lake. Don't tell Silver Lake we said that. It's about 60 foot deep in its deepest basin in the South Basin, 7 miles long, 1 mile wide. And it is comprised by a watershed of 6 towns, 1 village, the village of Livonia. There are 2 water suppliers from in the picture, and that's the village of Avon and village of Geneseo. Both provide water from Conesus Lake. And we have the distinct luck to be located all in one county. And that really helps in the administration of any programs that we have, because we only have to deal with one county structure as opposed to the larger Finger Lakes, which have to deal with 2 and 3 and 4 counties. So we are lucky in that geographic category. Just a brief history. So the watershed management program, watershed management in Livingston County, Don will go over, is a lot, has a lot more history than just the late 90s. I'll let Don talk about that. But the watershed inspection program started in 1998 with our current kind of iteration in the department. In 2002, this lake was listed on the 303D list of impaired waters, DEC. From that, we received funding from the state to do a state of the lake report and a watershed management plan. In 2003, the watershed management plan was published. It had 32 recommendations for implementing, bettering, improving the water quality in the lake. And in 2004, we hired our first watershed manager who's housed in the planning department. Just a brief look at the structure of Livingston County, Conesus Lake Watershed Council. So the Watershed Council is a body that was formed by an intermunicipal agreement in 2003, once the management plan was adopted. It is comprised of 5 of the towns in the watershed, the village of Livonia, Livingston County, and then the 2 water suppliers who have kind of a little square around them to show you village of Avon and village of Geneseo are water suppliers. The council itself oversees the implementation of the watershed management plan, and the watershed management team kind of has 2 prongs to it. We have a watershed management plan implementation, the watershed manager, and we have the watershed inspection program that's run through the Department of Health. Watershed Council is comprised of the elected officials, but there are several committees that are underneath the Watershed Council. You've got primarily the technical committee is the working committee that meets monthly as there is business to discuss. We also have an ag committee and a public education and outreach committee, which has kind of morphed, not officially, but the Watershed Education Committee, a lot of the work the public education and outreach committee used to do. There's also an invasive species subcommittee and a shorescaping subcommittee. So with that, I'd like to go through kind of a survey of the past 20 years and not take 20 years to do that. So we had an intern spring of fall. We had an intern who helped us to put together a 20-year anniversary report that we will be launching in May, and we'll put up on our website. But until then, you get a sneak peek at 20 years of partnerships protecting water quality. And I should mention the Watershed team is not just the three of us that you see here. We've got an important partner in the Conesus Lake Association, also in our state and federal partners, Soil and Water Conservation District, Natural Resource Conservation Service, DEC, Ag and Markets, the Department of Ag and Markets of the state. We could not do this all by ourselves, and it's not just a county initiative. We're just here talking about it. What you're seeing on the screen is the very first annual report and the most recent annual report, which also has not been published yet. So you're getting a sneak peek of the cover of that report.
Not bad.
A yearly look at the lake and all the activities that we've been doing and putting them into annual report cards. And all of these are available on our county's website under the Conesus Lake page, which I will talk about later. I should mention that over the past 23 years, we've been able to secure over $9.5 million in funding for projects and programs to help implement the Conesus Lake Watershed Management Plan. That's a lot of time, attention, and partnerships going towards helping to improve the water quality of the lake, also the water quality in the streams in the watershed. Just to go through some of our physical projects, a stream bank remediation program back in 2015. We had 7 stream reaches where we got funded to work with landowners to implement before and after practices. So what you're seeing on the screen, Valley in Livonia and North McMillan Creek in Conesus, kind of a before and an after. I apologize for the graininess of the pictures. There were screen grabs of our report, but these physical projects do take a lot of coordination, and the local highway departments provided the match for those grants. They provided the labor, the equipment, and the grant paid for the materials.
Stop it, all right?
What you're seeing on this slide are agricultural projects. We have, over the past 20 years, Soil and Water Conservation District and USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service have worked with over 50 farms. And every year, our allocation of Finger Lakes, Lake Ontario Watershed Protection Alliance funds, a significant portion of that goes to agricultural best management practices in the watershed. All of these projects also have a landowner contribution component. So the partnerships bring together the funding mix, and the landowner also provides funding or in-kind services for these projects. Everything from pond and drainage basins, cover crops, swales, underground drainage, and more. And then a large portion of what we do is public education related. As Mary mentioned, one of those pieces is the Watershed Education Program. Over the past 20 years, there's been 10 brochures and pamphlets, 15 education campaigns, and 53 Watershed Education Center programs. There's also been the Conesus campaign through the CLA, and there's kiosks at both Mattel Park and Long Point Park, which show visitors to the park that they're in a watershed, where they are in that watershed, and some fun facts about watershed, invasive species, kind of an educational presence as well. And what you're seeing on the screen is we've been to festivals at various festivals. Department of Health and the inspection program have gone out with a stream table, which it actively demonstrates erosion and what's happening on the land can affect water quality. There's been a youth planting day. In the bottom center, you see is a massive construction project. It's creating rain barrels out of barrels from the Genesee brewery. And as I mentioned, the Conesus campaign, all of us doing our part. We wholly support that message. Also, some of our publications that we've gotten, from everything from kiosk panels that will be put out at the rain garden that you saw when you came in. Rain gardens, natural shorelines. What you see in the bottom center here is one of those educational panels from the kiosks at the park. And just a fun fact, this little girl right there is my daughter. She is now 15, and this was the first time she ever had a glass of water from an actual cup. So what you're not seeing is the water that was on her shirt that's been photoshopped out. But we love the expression, never put anything into the lake that you wouldn't want in your child's glass of water. A powerful message. She, to this day, the blue education sheet is in the kiosks of both parks, and she will take you straight to them and say, that was me. She might not do it as enthusiastically now because she's 15, but she does it. Next, we have the Watercraft Steward Program, which started 10 years ago in 2013, and since that time, there's been 175 boats with contaminants intercepted. That's a very powerful number. And over 160,000 people have been reached by the education materials and the experience of going through the boat launches. Partners for that are State Parks, SUNY ESF, and the CLA. Got a strong piece of and a significant piece of our watershed management plan implementation is monitoring and technology. How do you know that the lake is getting better or the lake is getting worse if you don't have data on that resource? How do you know that what you are doing on the watershed actually has a statistically significant showing of impact at the mouth of the streams? Well, we have partnerships, decades-long partnerships from the beginning with SUNY Geneseo and SUNY Brockport to do our watershed management, our watershed monitoring, and our in-lake monitoring. It's a very valuable partnership for us, and the watershed monitoring has already started for this year to capture some of the spring events that are happening. But also there's other monitoring initiatives like CSLAP monitoring, which I will not be able to get the acronym. Citizen Science Lake.
Yeah, I just kept my sneaker on the counter.
Oh, okay.
Or the whatever.
So, undertaken some monitoring of their own with the weather station that's located here. Also some underwater monitoring. Lake temperature profilers. We also have drones, underwater cameras, and real-time lake level reporting through our partners. See on the screen some more monitoring photos and the efforts that are underway. The SUNY Geneseo and SUNY Brockport monitoring that I mentioned are some of the pictures here. I just want to bring your attention to the upper left picture. What you're seeing there is DEC winter monitoring. They are actually not walking on water. It's on ice. Though the state will often tell you they walk. No, they won't tell you they walk on water. That's not fair. Another large push from the beginning. It was Gene Meakin of the Conesus Lake Association who raised the issue and the danger of the boat launch and of invasive species coming into this waterway without being detected and then creating a very serious problem. And from her efforts to get a recommendation in the plan about managing those invasive species at the boat launch, education or otherwise, that we have come to where we are now. Looking for invasive species that did not hit the radar back 20 years ago, that are now very high on our watch list, including hydrilla, including starry stonewort that Mary will talk about, and some terrestrials like mile a minute, which is a success story in finding something early and being able to, after years of partnership, start to eradicate that invasive species from the land. You also see on the bottom center is an invasive species disposal station, which is there at the boat launches, at both the car top boat launches.
Did you know that the mile a minute invasive species was just about completely eradicated?
For anyone who sees aquatic vegetation on their boats, can put that into this clean, drain, dry station, and let it can be disposed of from there. Won't spend much time on this because Mary has a section on starry stonewort and kayak surveys as part of that as well. All that to say, our eyes are open to the newest invasives, the historic invasives, and if you think about that world, if you let your mind wander there, it's a scary and concerning place. We've also had special projects over the past 2 decades. The top center, some of you remember the Solar Bee, which was a water circulator project, or it was a pilot study to see if putting water circulators throughout the lake would help improve the water quality around those units. They turned out to be, they didn't show a statistically significant improvement in the water quality, but I think it was a good look at new technology. And in fact, the Solar Bees led to a recommendation to be added to the watershed management plan about assessing new technology as it comes up. On the right-hand side, you'll see the rain garden. That's just outside the doorway here. And you'll see the bathymetric survey, which is the depth of the lake. It was also coupled with some invasive species education materials, and the bottom center is fish stocking that's done by DEC and the CLA over the years. We've also dabbled in road ditch remediation. What you're seeing here is the steep side hill of East Lake Road in Livonia that was stabilized by a grant. And down there it's a little hard to see the before and the after, but you see on North Gully a concrete wall caved in, and it was fixed by the county highway department with FLOPA funding, grant funding. And we've had a myriad of education products, which are all education reports are all on our website and available to the discerning public. Everything from the state of the lake report, the 10-year update to the state of the lake report, the watershed management plan, and other reports and publications that you see here. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mary to talk about watershed updates.
Okay. Just a reminder, I see a couple of notes have come into the chat. So anybody that has a question, feel free to throw that into the chat. Because we'll have ample time for Q&A at the end. Okay, so Heather did a great overview, and I know you guys are on the edge of your seat waiting for that 20-year report to come out because it's such a great visual story. I'm going to be talking a little bit about what we did specifically in 2022. So it's a nice year in review. So this is invasive species response plan. I think all of us are aware of the fact that Conesus Lake Watershed Council has an invasive species response plan, and it was activated in 2021 when the starry stonewort invasive was discovered in the state boat launch, and we mobilized quite an extensive response and very successful to that. A couple of things, local and regional watershed partners and citizens collaborated together, and it was a wonderful network of support. The planning department, IMAP Invasives team, and Finger Lakes Institute created a live map. And so on the right-hand side here, we're taking a look at this interactive map, real time, so that when volunteers like the CLA, and here's CLA with FLY, Finger Lakes Institute, we're out sampling for starry stonewort, which is here on the left-hand side. They could plot, they find the location that they were at and whether they found it or did not find it. And real time it came up. So it was very responsive. And so we were lucky to have that partnership with IMAP Invasives and FLY to be able to do that. So people could be out in a vessel or in a kayak and figure out where they've been and where they should be going next. The other thing that we were able to do was have folks sign up. We had over 40 volunteers sign up that season. And it allowed us to be able to go out and systematically sample the lake and go into areas where we knew there were clusters of starry stonewort, or in areas where we didn't think there was much of anything. And we were able to detect 51 locations around Conesus Lake, pretty much around the perimeter of the whole lake. And so 51 locations. And 109 locations where it was not present. Equally important information when you're trying to figure out how you would respond to that. There is, behind the invasive species response plan is a subcommittee, an invasive species subcommittee. We will be reactivating that subcommittee again this spring to go out and start sampling again. Almost all of the folks that were out in the water were volunteers. And we'd like to go out there and revisit some of those sites and also see if there are additional sites. Bring that information back to the invasive species subcommittee, bring it to our technical committee for their review and comment, and then move it on to the council to see if there might be a next step or how they would like to respond. But it was an amazing collaboration. I felt very privileged to have that opportunity. So a little bit more about invasive species, not just starry stonewort. Heather had captured quite a few pictures about all of the activities that we've done over the years, and this is our annual effort. So we've got our watercraft stewards here. These were the two stewards that were at the state boat launch, and they manned their station quite well from Memorial Day to mid-August. We got the young folks through that time. We're lucky to have the collaboration that we do on the program because it is funded through state parks and ESF. And we have a 5-year contract running now, so we know that it's going to be funded. And they do try for 2 stewards. There's always a promise for maybe getting a floating steward. We haven't gotten that nailed down yet, but we're hopeful that we're going to get that this year. Scott Proctor, one of our CLA folks, monitors the data quite well. And even though the number of boats has gone down over the last couple of years, there was some great success in the program in terms of improvements. So total days, here's everything that was improved in just 1 calendar year. Total days covered, fishing boats inspected, total launches inspected, risk launches inspected, and organisms detected. So even though the overall boat numbers went down, we had some tremendous success with the program and these 2 watercraft stewards, and we're hoping for that same kind of success in the coming years. Also, this is a nice flyer for the Watershed Education Center. You can see all of our partners here and the fact that you can get the calendar on the web. And that was an invasive species program that supports our initiatives. The Mile a Minute is in the town of Geneseo. This was discovered about 5 years ago. This is an example of a success story. Everybody knows the invasion curve. If you can catch something right when it's discovered, the population is small, you have a much greater chance of eradication. We were hoping for that experience with starry stonewort. It's become apparent that we've missed that opportunity. We have too much starry stonewort for eradication in the lake. But the Mile a Minute in this particular location was addressed rapidly, and we do believe that we're going to be able to eradicate that. Right now, SUNY Brockport has taken over that initiative for the last couple of years, and they report that the seed bank is going down. Smaller number of plants are being pulled. Hand pulling actually was the answer for that, not chemicals, not fire. They ended up doing hand pulling. So we are going to see eradication at that location. And Brockport's dedicated to coming back year after year until that seed bank is gone. Because unfortunately, you guys know with invasives, seeds last a long time, and Mile a Minute is one of those. They last 7 years. They're viable up to 7 years. And then here we have a CLA president, current president, installing, this is Eric Randall, installing the spotter and lanternfly trap. We had several traps in the watershed last year. And one of the wineries, and you guys probably know that our wineries are at great risk for spotter and lanternfly because they like that crop. And so we are hoping to deploy those traps again in 2023. Nothing was detected by those traps, so that's not gonna. Ag BMPs and stormwater erosion control. Heather mentioned the partnership that we have with Livingston County Soil Conservation District. We've got 2 farmers here that were funded in 2022. This is the Cadyville farm, and if you know your farmers, that's Chris Cicero, and this is the Webb farm. And this project here was a failed pond and 2 drainage ditches that needed to be reconstructed. And then the installation of a shallow diversion ditch to be able to manage the stormwater and the erosion that was happening on site. And as a result of this, the next project, they're going to be able to work on adjacent lands. And that here positively impacted 100 acres of farmland. So it was a project that was a big bang for the buck. This one is the Webb farm, and I think people kind of remember this event last year. I know Don does, because that was on his radar. This project was designed to the same thing: erosion control, stormwater management, and to reduce the flooding. What had happened here was there was a berm that was interfering with the water being able to access the floodplain. There was a lot of debris in the stream, and so Soil and Water Conservation District got in and moved that berm away and created, the area that was remediated, and had some success by putting in that buffer in that floodplain access so the water won't reach the stream. And then Don had an erosion control workshop that also supports the efforts. Do you have that on your presentation? Don had a presentation. He worked with Bob Stryker from Soil Water Conservation. You had 22 participants. So, yeah. And that reaches contractors. So there's another increase the number of successes. The grants in progress, Heather mentioned a little bit that we've got 2 projects. We had in the old outlet, we had the removal of the 2 undersized culverts. And you can see here's a drone image supplied by the Department of Health. And you can see the culverts are still in here at this time. And then this was taken out in 2021. The bridge was put in 2021, but was opened in 2022 in the spring when they were able to put on a surface treatment. And you can see already how this open span bridge is enhancing the circulation in this area, reducing the HABs and reducing that coagulation of aquatic vegetation. And then Heather had mentioned that the next step in this year will be the replacement of the dam, further enhancing that circulation in this area. And then the natural shoreline project, if you take a look, I love this before and after shot. Of course, this is the Vitel Park and the eastern portion of the park. And what we had here was a natural shore project that extended along the point and up the eastern bank. And it was also intended to work as a demonstration project for our residents around the lake. Not necessarily when they go and get big boulders, but things like small rock, koi logs, and natural plantings is something everybody can do, as opposed to just doing break walls. And then plantings for the natural shoreline were just put in last week, and I know Don was up there taking a look and inspecting that. So we are near completion on that. Publication and outreach, just real quick, I've got, there's our education series for the year. It's always posted in the Penny Saver. We have a couple of college presentations. This is SUNY Geneseo. Here we have the Troop 5074 from Livonia supporting our rain barrel program. We have just hit a mile marker with 100 rain barrels. You have one in the watershed. So 100 rain barrels in the watershed and growing. And here we have the most participation in any of our programs. It's the Livonia High School kids, and 100, no, I'm sorry, I went up, that's funny, 75 participants. I gave them a little boost, 75 participants here. And then of course the Conesus Lake supports education through their public booths and also through their welcome kits. We have 55 welcome kits that were distributed last year alone. Water quality initiatives, Heather mentioned that the CSLAP program operates in our watershed. The CLA provides the volunteers for our CSLAP as well, usually 3 volunteers. This is a slightly older one where Chris Willoughby was still part of the group. And they do take data twice a month, June through September. So it is time well spent. Here we have the SUNY Geneseo kids in the watershed with the summer monitoring program. They are in the water. And they also have a team that's in the watershed. So this is the water team, SUNY Geneseo, and SUNY Brockport is in the watershed. HABs will be addressed by Don, and then here's a little bit of information from, or visual from the watershed team, SUNY Brockport. And that wraps up my portion of the program, and now it is Don's turn.
Thank you, Mary. Hey, hi everyone. I'm Don Mariansky with the Department of Health. Mark Grove is our director. I'm the watershed inspector, and then Robert Mankoff is co-inspector. He's a technician, so he does most of our beach sampling. And I'll get into that a little bit later. So what I do is enforce the rules and regs of of Conesus Lake to prevent contamination of the water supply. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. So we have things like making sure silt fences are up on construction projects. We monitor HABs, a whole bunch of other things. But that's just part of my job as a sanitarian. I also regulate children's camps, issue septic permits. We do, food service establishments, a whole bunch of other stuff. But I say that because Mark, our director, has made it so I regulate facilities that are in the watershed. So it makes it really nice to be able to do Camp Salamaris. There's a couple mobile home parks on the lake that we monitor. I issue all the septic permits in the watershed. So that makes it so I can keep an eye on all of those things. They kind of mesh is what I'm trying to say. So we get complaints and respond to issues regarding weeds, algae, dead fish, odors, chemicals, petroleum spills, sewage discharges. We had a really big sewage discharge last year over on East Lake Road. So I worked with Livingston County's the water department there to make sure everything was all cleaned up and it wasn't going to happen again, or take measures to prevent it from happening again. We also present to the public a lot. Heather showed pictures of the stream table there. We haven't done any programs since COVID. That kind of put an end to everything. So I'm looking forward to starting that back up again. But that really put a damper on our public education part, working with schools and stuff. And we work with the DEC a lot. I work with Bob Stryker with Soil and Water on a regular basis. Code enforcement has been great, especially recently. We've developed a lot of great partnerships with code enforcement. Here's just an example of the comparing years of the types of complaints that we get. Most of it is sediment and erosion control, construction sites not having proper silt fence or erosion control up. Dead animals in the water, we get calls all the time. I dragged a deer out of a lady's yard a couple of years ago just because they think it's what we should do. So separate from my watershed duties, I regulate the public beaches, so we make sure they have all the safety equipment and things like that. And then we also monitor those two beaches, Camp Salamaris and it's Conesus Lake RV Park Beach now. I need to change that. But those are two public beaches that we regulate. So we have to take weekly samples at those places to make sure the fecal coliform colonies are at an acceptable level. We have to shut down if the water quality gets too, if it degrades, we need to shut the beaches down. In my time here, we have not had to close a beach because of coliform. It actually has stayed well below. The numbers last year ranged from less than one colony to 42, and I think 1,000. Yeah, 1,000 is the regulatory limit. So we haven't come close. So I guess I should have mentioned this on at least a weekly basis. I drive around the lake to monitor for new construction sites, any other types of issues. And we also have spots where we stop along the lake to monitor for harmful algal blooms. And those include the public bathing beaches. So last year we had seven HAB complaints that came from the public. We identified 5 harmful algal blooms. The first one occurring on July 5th and the last one occurring on August 12th. We try to issue public notices whether there's a bloom or not, just so that folks that are coming out for the weekend know what to expect. But you all know that can change within hours. So we did have to close Camp Salamaris Beach 2 times and the Conesus Lake RV Park Beach once. But that one was a really long period of time. I don't have the exact numbers of days, but We took a reopening sample one day and then had to shut it down before we could communicate with the owner that it could reopen, so. Here's a couple of photos of harmful algal blooms. This is right here at Vitale Park. You can see the streaks starting to form. And this one here is at Camp Stella Maris right off the docks. And so it's not a great, really noticeable bloom, but you can definitely see the things start to form, and we don't want campers swimming in that. Here's an example of a sample. This has multiple species of blue-green algae in it. I'll talk later about our new microscope, but this is my old tabletop microscope, and I'd have to take a photo with my camera on the lens. So excited about our new scope. So our department issues permits and inspects septic systems. And like I said, I'm in charge of issuing the permits on the lake. We had 4 new build septic system permitted last year, 7 repaired systems. A repaired system is when the system is failing for whatever reason, breaking out or just not, toilets aren't flushing, whatever. And so we issue repairs, and then we come out and inspect and make sure that the contractor installed everything right. There is a septic replacement fund grant that is available, and I don't have the exact numbers right. I think that the septic system needs to be within 250 feet of a blue line stream. And then I think the grant pays up to 50% of the cost, if that's the case. So it's a pretty good deal. This is not of last year. I'm not really good at taking photos of my field work, but this is a new septic system installed right over at Deer Run Winery. All right, now I get to talk about our tools, I mean. So the department has a drone that's available. I think in Mary and Heather's presentations, a lot of the photos were from the drone that Mark Grove, our director, operates. So that's available to take pictures of certain issues like this island forming down in the south end and just monitoring that situation. Can also take photos of weed beds and see changes that way. This is a really good shot of the new natural shoreline project. This is the new scope that I'm really excited about. So before, when we were doing HAB samples or any kind of water sample, I'd have to take the sample at the site and then drive it back to the office. Take a photo with my cell phone up to the lens and send it to Sid Bosch over at SUNY Genesee to identify the blue-green algae. Now, this microscope, it's a portable microscope that has its own Wi-Fi, so it transmits the image to my cell phone on an app. I can focus it on the app. I can take a screenshot, email it that way, and identify everything right in the field. So it's makes things a whole lot more efficient, especially on a Friday afternoon. Having to drive back to the office when I'm out in the field is really exciting about it. We also have an underwater camera. I had to use the stock photo because, again, I'm not really great with taking photos in the field of the work we're doing. But this turned out to be really great. We used it out on the boat when we were looking for starry stonewort. And Eric Randall was able to just point as we're going pretty fast and things, and he was able to pick out where the stonewort was. My eyes did not work that well, but it worked for him. So this is, Mary touched on this a little bit. This is the old outlet bridge, the culvert replacement. We're hoping that the water flows through there a lot more efficiently to prevent the weed buildup and the harmful algal blooms that would occur in there on a regular basis. And I don't know if any of you been through there when it gets clogged with vegetation like that, but when it starts to break down, it starts to stink pretty bad. It's pretty awful for the folks that are living right there too. So hopefully the culvert replacement and the drop down gate will help that. So the main part of my job, I would say it's 90% of what I'm doing out on the lake is stopping by construction sites and making sure there's proper sediment and erosion control. This is a really great example of no sediment and erosion control. So all these soil piles are unprotected. And then there's just a big channel that's essentially a ditch that's going right down to the lake. So, you know, my job is to stop and make contact with the contractor and make sure they fix it. Because it's snowing here, so it's not that big of a deal. But if we had a large rainstorm, that could be a pretty big issue and lead to a lot of sediment going out into the lake. This is another example. I'm also really good at taking before pictures of the violation and not great at taking pictures of the fixed proper erosion control. So this site a couple days later had some really nice hay bales buried right along here. And they rehabbed all this, seeded and mulched all this area, and it looked really nice. I monitored the natural shoreline project for any potential sediment issues. And just because I thought it was a really great project and keep track of it. This is, now that I'm looking at this photo, I didn't really see it, but this is an excavator in the water creating some pretty large plumes of sediment. I missed that before, so that would be something that I would have addressed with the contractor. Another photo. I also forgot that I'm also monitoring the solar project that's over on Lake Road by the winery. I don't know why I didn't include photos, but that part of my job is to review the engineered plans to make sure they have all their sediment and erosion control things in place. So the code enforcement officer will send those plans to our office and we'll review them, make sure they're up to par, and then we'll do regular inspections at the sites to make sure things are going all right. That's it.
Thanks, Don. Actually, Don's story about the solar project brings up something I forgot to mention in the history, and that was one of the first things we did once the plan was adopted was to create a soil sediment and erosion control law. There you go. That the towns could adopt it was actually stricter than the DEC's disturbance limits. DEC said if you disturb more than an acre of soil, you need erosion and sediment control installed before you break ground. The erosion and sediment control model law that we did actually reduced that threshold to 500 square foot of soil. And if it was a larger project, a quarter of an acre, required the heavy lift of an erosion and sediment control plan, not just permit. And funny story, I was tasked in my early years when I first came to write that erosion and sediment control model law. Not having any model law experience, I brought together some model laws from other places. And it was my first experience in being held to a law that you create. I didn't like it because I built in the town of Geneseo. The town of Geneseo had adopted that erosion and sediment control law. And I was disturbing more than 500 square foot with my driveway. The code officer came up and said, okay, Heather, here's your paperwork for your erosion and sediment control permit. I said, oh, no. So the young land use planner in me had the experience of being beholden to the land use regulations that I was creating. Oh, that was a lesson. So I'm here to tell you again about what's coming in the future. And one of the things that a really exciting development is that Livingston County received a grant from the Department of State to update the watershed management plan. So it's been 20 years. The plan has received awards for being one of the most implemented plans in the state, in that at least quarterly, we have elected officials talking about the lake and its issues for the past 20 years. That momentum is continuing, and we have really great support from our municipalities to keep that going. So the watershed management plan, we're at the very infancy stages of the project starting. We're going to be getting a consultant on board, and then there will be 2 opportunities for public input into the plan, formal opportunities. One will be in kind of a scoping session, and the other will be looking at the draft plan that's created after we go through this project. So those are 2 things to really be aware of, and we'll alert the public and the CLA, municipalities, that those public opportunities are coming. But that's an exciting, refreshing look at getting some new recommendations. There are things that have popped up since this last go around, so let's get those under our belts as well. There is one of the projects that was last year there was a Long Point Stormwater Management Facility feasibility study. So before we go for grant applications, usually our funders want to know that what we're proposing is feasible. So we took a look at the potential for a stormwater plan at the bottom end of Long Point Road and Westlake Road. So that is currently in discussion to see if that's feasible for state funding. That's phase 2 of another project we've got going on, a road ditch remediation project in the town of Geneseo. Long Point Road is going to be remediated between Westlake Road and just almost to the first hill. That will be the county highways project. Story Road in the town of Sparta will also have a segment that's remediated. And Jones Hill Road in the town of Conesus has also received grant funding to help with a road ditch situation they have up there. Those projects will be starting possibly in the fall through the following year. The CLA and the watershed team are looking at stream gauges, placing stream gauges or stream gauge in the watershed itself. One of the things that came out of our safe field study, which I didn't mention, we had a safe field study done. One of the things that came out of that was to get a more local look at what's happening in the watershed for gauging the flow of water into the lake. And so there was a technical memorandum that we engaged Schnabel, who is a consultant firm, to look into that feasibility. There's also a corridor strategic plan going on right now for Route 28 and the corridor in the hamlet of Lakeville. And that's just had its public meeting, and it's actively going through the process right now. So there should be a plan coming out of that. And then, as we mentioned, that 20-year report, you got a sneak peek of that tonight. I also wanted to let you know that there is a website that has a lot of resources for all things Conesus Lake that's housed on the County Planning Department's website. And I've got the website address at the bottom of this slide. Any report that we have funded, any of the SUNY Geneseo, SUNY Brockport monitoring reports are up on, if they were in digital format when they came to us, they're on the website now. We're actively scanning the other ones to get them on the website, but to make that a resource, an information resource for anyone who wants to know more information on what's happening in the water as well as in the watershed. All of our public education campaigns, our harmful algal bloom resources, public education, invasive species, and anything you ever would want to know about the watershed. This is also where we'll be posting on the watershed management plan update. We'll be using this website as well. So if you'd like any additional information, you can check here as well. And open up for questions, and also wanted to put our contact information up on the screen.